In 1985, Henri Cosquer was exploring an underwater cave off the coast of Marseille. After crawling and twisting over 130 meters through submerged tunnels, he finally surfaced in the main chamber. What met his eyes astounded him. Horses, seabirds, even a lion cub perhaps. Incredible scenes of prehistoric life. Although this cave was now underwater, 20,000 years ago during the Ice Age, sea levels were 100 meters lower, and this cave stood in the cliffs above a large coastal plain, obviously teeming with life. For the people of the Ice Age, such caves were clearly special places, and like Henri, they too made their way through the twisting tunnels, guided only by the light of a faint torch, to paint these incredible scenes. They didn't just paint natural scenes though, they also left behind handprints, the most evocative form of prehistoric artwork. It's like these ancient artists are reaching through time to greet us. However, something about these handprints was odd. Some were seemingly missing fingers. In fact, a lot of them were. Of the 49 hand stencils in Cosquer Cave, 28 are missing fingers. Why? Hello. Cosquer Cave is not the only cave we've ever found where these hand prints are missing fingers. In Spain, the site of Moltravieso and Fuente del Truco both have them. In France, La Grande Grotte, Margot, and Tiburon all have them. In fact, of the 10 handprints on the walls at Tiburon, all of them are missing fingers. They've even been found as far away as Indonesia, as shown in this paper. However, the site with the most missing fingers is definitely Gargas Cave, also in France. Here, of the 231 handprints, a massive 114 are missing fingers. That's almost exactly half. That's a lot. Not all of these handprints have been dated, and it can in fact be quite tricky to date cave art at times, unless it's made with charcoal, but the ones made out of ochre, very challenging to date. However, it does seem to be that these date to the Gravettian period, or roughly 22 to 27,000 years ago. The absolute height of the last ice age. Massive ice sheets covered northern Europe. Much of the continent was tundra and steppe. People survived by hunting woolly rhinos and woolly mammoths, these huge ice age beasts. It was a different time. It was a very different time. Just because these people were living in a harsh time though, climate-wise, doesn't mean that they weren't exceptionally creative. Of course, we have all this fantastic cave art, but it is also the time when these female figurines, these Venus figurines, were really being produced. And some of them are even perhaps the oldest portraits, realistic portraits of humans that have ever been made. They're absolutely beautiful. Nevertheless, this was a cold time. This was a very cold time indeed. And this brings us to our first hypothesis with regards to these missing fingers. Perhaps the people were suffering from frostbite. The only thing worse than losing a finger is having an unsecure internet connection, which is why I'd like to thank Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Surfshark is a VPN provider, a virtual private network, which keeps you safe online by encrypting all the information your device sends to the internet. It basically swaps your IP address for an IP address on a different server. Naturally, this makes it a great way to keep yourself safe and secure when you're using public Wi-Fi, traveling, uploading files, crawling through a cave to try and paint an Ice Age bird. This is what I use it for. This is what I genuinely use it for 99% of the time. You can change your location. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in 100 countries. Of course, you know me, I'm a British guy in America. I'm logging back into the UK just to watch TV, just to see what's going on. But if that was not even a good enough reason to use it, different companies have different prices for goods depending on where you're buying them. Infuriatingly, especially like large ticket items like plane tickets and stuff like that. You can hop on Surfshark, skilly plop, change your location, get a deal. What's going on Belgian TV? You can find out with Surfshark and get yourself a great deal on a brilliant waffle. If all of this sounds good to you, head to surfshark.com/Stefan Milo or use code Stefan Milo. You'll get 4 extra months free. It's very cheap anyway. And you get a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there really is no risk. Thank you to Surfshark for supporting my attempts at science education here on YouTube. Frostbite is the freezing and death of tissue due to exposure to extremely cold and wet conditions. It looks absolutely terrible. My gosh, I wouldn't want to experience that. Horrible. It tends to affect the extremities the most: fingers, the nose, the cheeks, the genitals, heaven forbid. And even the most experienced people, the most experienced of Arctic survivors, can suffer from it. The Inuit have traditional remedies for frostbite. It can happen to the most experienced mountain climbers in Nepal. Anyone, no matter your experience level of dealing with cold temperatures, can have an accident, can go through a particularly challenging moment, and could get frostbite. Absolutely, this could have happened to people in the Gravettian period. Once frostbite gets really bad, the only solution is amputation. The skin just cannot be saved. But could people in the Paleolithic amputate fingers and things like this? Well, it would definitely be a terrible time, but it seems like they could, and I'm going to show you this really interesting example. This is the leg of a young person who lived 31,000 years ago on the island of Borneo. So, well away from Ice Age France. Certainly this poor chap didn't have frostbite. But he did seemingly suffer a terrible accident. Their lower limb was amputated, probably during their childhood, and it seems they lived for at least 6 to 9 years after that, experts estimate. Of course, we could never know, really, the accident that caused this amputation, what happened there, but it does go to show that people, even deep in the Paleolithic, tens of thousands of years ago, were willing to try quite extreme medical procedures, and it wasn't certain death, at least. You could survive them. So it certainly could be the case that the creators of these handprints, these stencils, these images, went through a particularly harsh winter, a moment of their life when they were really out there and exposed in these terrible Ice Age conditions, and they lost some fingers. The only thing that might be hard to explain with this scenario is why is it so concentrated in just a couple of caves, particularly Gargas and Cosquer cave. Yeah, that might be hard to explain. We might see in that scenario a more random distribution of the fingers that are lost, but a lot of the time it seems to be a pinky finger, and the thumb is usually always present too. Seems like no one ever got frostbite on their thumb. This hypothesis also assumes that the loss of these digits was accidental, and we don't know that. Perhaps these people are deliberately covering their fingers. Hypothesis number 2. Let's assume that these fingers are not actually missing, not deliberately removed or lost in an accident. What could these artists be doing? What could they be portraying? What are they trying to communicate? Are they trying to communicate something? There's been a lot of ideas around this, a lot of ideas. Perhaps these people were trying to count something, illustrate the number of something. What they are trying to count, I'm not entirely sure. It's hard for me to get a sense of the relationship between sort of these animal images and these hand stencils, these hand prints. But it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. Recently, there's been some attention given to random dots and lines and things like that found next to these animal images in various caves across Europe. Perhaps these are trying to count or indicate the month or season where an animal might be giving birth and is therefore most vulnerable, most likely to have easy prey around them. Perhaps there's some scenario like that at play. Another idea is that these could be a form of sign language, almost like hunting signals. These sorts of sign language are very well documented in the ethnographic record. The San people in southern Africa, they use hand symbols to illustrate different animals when they're hunting and stalking prey. And sometimes it seems these signals are truly reflected in art. Check these out. These are handprints from Queensland, Australia. And according to the Aboriginal people nearby, these do have specific meanings. In this diagram, J is a fish, K means here in this spot, L means bad person or thing, and the one with the pinky out means grub. Not a cup of tea. British Sign Language. So the authors of that paper, Ricardo Etchepare and Aritz Irutzun, apologies if I said their names wrong, they wanted to see if there were any obvious patterns in the handprints at Gargas Cave. And they found something really interesting. According to their results, all the various configurations of hands on the wall at Gargas are possible to make with your hands, unsupported by a wall. Hand shapes that are impossible to make, for example, L in this diagram, in this example, you can't stick your ring finger up in the air on its own because it doesn't have its own muscle. Positions that your hand cannot possibly be in are absent, and all of the positions of the handprints are possible to make. Now, me personally, I do find it tricky. I do find this F particularly tricky. Let me see here, 1 second. Yeah, F. 2 fingers folded down, 2 in the air. I suppose I can do it, but man, that is tricky. But it isn't tricky to imagine or to believe that something is trying to be communicated by these images, right? Even just a perfectly, complete hand. Something must be meant by it, because these caves are really tricky to get into, even with all your modern climbing equipment, never mind guided by the faintest of torches. Something was compelling these people to make these trips time and time again, potentially hundreds of times in the case of Gargas Cave. Very, 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 very likely had something to do with a complex worldview, a symbolic worldview, which brings us on to hypothesis number 3. Archaeologist's number 1 friend, ritual. I love to talk about it. As far as I'm aware, this gentleman here is a member of the Dani tribe in Papua New Guinea. As you can see, 3 of his fingers have been amputated. This lady here has lost the ends of 2 fingers. In the custom of these people, it is tradition to cut off one of the digits of your finger when you've lost a loved one. It's sort of a sacrifice, to show your grief and maybe perhaps an offering to assist this person into the journey into the great beyond. Maybe almost like paying a toll, paying a fee to help them. It seems quite extreme, right? There's, from my modern worldview, modern British chap, it seems quite extreme to do that. But these kinds of body modifications are, again, very well documented historically. There's this really interesting paper here, Finger Amputation in Ethnographic and Archaeological Records by Brea Macaulay and Mark Collard. Scrolling through ethnographic accounts and historical accounts, they found 181 references to deliberate finger amputations from all across the world. The justifications for these ranged from, medical reasons, like you've got frostbite, for example, to punishments, to class identifiers. Sometimes people's fingers would be amputated to show that they were a part of a lesser class, to, religious sacrifices like the Dani people in Papua New Guinea. All sorts of reasons and justifications people from around the world had to deliberately amputate their fingers. Considering how well documented this practice is, I think it absolutely cannot be ruled out that at various times in the Paleolithic, seemingly at this time in the Paleolithic in France, in Spain, in these regions here, people got it into their heads that it was important for them to cut off a finger for whatever reason. Body modification, let's not pretend that body modification isn't the most human of things, right? Some cultures take it to more of an extreme, but all humans kind of engage in body modification, even just cutting our hair and things like that. These all signify things subtly or explicitly about who we are and our identity and all of these things. It's a very human thing to modify your body. Granted, cutting off a finger is extreme. But it's a very human thing to do, in a way. The only thing about this hypothesis is, how can we test it? How can we test it, right? How can we test if these people truly cut their fingers off? All right, so there's this idea that the fingers must have been cut off or amputated or something, because if you did it with them folded over like that, they wouldn't leave a nice clean handprint. So we're gonna give it a go, man. We're gonna give it a go. I got a shell that I gathered from the beach with some charcoal, some water, some animal fat, AKA Kerrygold butter. We're just gonna give it a go. See if I can test one of these hypotheses. Mix it up. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be disgusting. Guys, do I really have to put this slop in my mouth? Butter not mixing in as well as I had hoped. You know what, harder than it looks to make a nice smooth charcoal paste with a shell and a stick. Alright, I don't know if you can still see me because of the rain, but I found this nice dry rock, a little bit sheltered. Let's see what we can do here. It's disgusting. Alright. Well, after that disgusting effort, I have achieved nothing. It is not showing up on the rock. Alright. Could be my inexperience. This is the first time I've literally ever tried to do this, but difficult to get a clean handprint with my fingers folded over. Just to test, unfortunately I have to do it again with my hands fully flat. Oh god, I don't want to do this. I wonder if they ever retched like that in the Paleolithic. Bloody hell. I think I'm just not very good at this. Alright. Test, basically it seems, inconclusive. I'll wait a minute to see if they dry up at all, but I definitely found it easier to put my hand flat against the wall with without my fingers folded over. Yeah, I don't know why those hands are missing fingers, to be honest, but maybe that little lion they drew bit one of them off. They were certainly better at doing this than I am. My mixture is all wrong. I had another attempt at those handprints. I couldn't leave it on that pitiful attempt on the cliff face. I think they're cutting their fingers off. I couldn't get a nice clean handprint. I couldn't get my digits to stick out far enough. If you look at the one they did, there's such a nice clean line in between the digits of these chopped off fingers. Maybe I'm just rubbish at it. Like, I'm out in the open, leaning against my fence, who knows what the neighbors thought, trying to position my fingers well. They're doing this in the dark, in a cave, illuminated only by a small torch. I think they cut their fingers off. I think they cut their fingers off. Hard to do.